Hello, this is Peter Bell. I'm here with Dr. Tim Marsh from Bell Copper. Hello, Tim.
Howdy, Peter. How are you?
Very good, thanks. I gather there's some exciting news hit the wire today from Bell. What does this news mean at a high level?
Well, it means we return to being 100% owners of the Kabba Project. The thing that we have discovered and that Rio Tinto has added tremendously to through their $3 million expenditure will be 100% Bell's, and we'll be able to capitalize on the opportunity that their expenditure has created.
Yes. And I gather there were some other items in the news as well, maybe something about a debenture. I'd seen that mentioned in some of the financial statements in the past, but hadn't realized some of the details about it.
For the past about 3 years, we have had a debenture held by Desert Fox, a subsidiary of Copper Fox Minerals, for about it was initially 150,000. It grew to 168,000 plus interest, which was secured against the property, and just by working with Copper Fox, we've extended that up to almost the present day, and we've raised some money and decided to get that removed from our books, get the property free and clear for making a deal with anybody that we might want to, remove the cloud of losing the property to a creditor. I guess you just get that out of our system, and so it's a 100% Bell asset, no cloud or threat against the title, and we will endeavor to make good on the gift that we were given by Rio Tinto.
Yeah, really. Free and clear on a couple counts there. Amazing to see you guys getting 100% of that thing back.
Yeah, I'm happy to have it back. It's a treasure, and we're going to make sure that accrues entirely to Bell shareholders rather than just a small fraction of whatever might be there accruing to our account.
And to be in the driver's seat again, it's a big responsibility too, I would think. Lots of questions, I'm sure, from people about all of that. Maybe first one's just basics. Are there any costs to Bell Copper from Rio leaving? Any encumbrances, future obligations, stuff like that?
There really aren't. There's always an environmental obligation to reclaim past work. So we created some drill pads and some roads. About 90% of that reclamation work is completed. We just plugged the 2 holes that were drilled in December yesterday. Finished the work yesterday.
Wow.
So there's the only item remaining for reclamation is to recontour and reseed the K18 and K19 drill pads and the access road out to K18. That's less than a week's worth of work. Kennecott deposited in our account enough money to get that work done, so we're still spending their money to clean up, complete that reclamation work. There's really no lingering cost to Bell Copper from Rio's contribution.
And that's you out there doing the grass seeding and making sure those holes are capped off in the right way and everything.
Yeah, you bet. I looked like Pigpen from Charlie Brown yesterday, covered from head to toe with bentonite mud and Portland cement after plugging K18 and K19. So we're using our own muscle where we can, and using local contractors to get the work done. That's Thunderbird Materials out of Kingman, Arizona. They're good guys. They're ranchers and gravel miners who are happy to have the extra work that Bell's been able to throw their way.
Yes, it occurs to me that, well, you as a working CEO again, right? And somebody in Vancouver in the downtown, if they're handed back a project from Rio, that's one thing. But for you to get it back, it seems like something else.
Through the years of doing reclamation work, I find that it gets done best if I'm standing there either directly overseeing it or participating in it. I lead by example. If there's nasty work to do, I'm the first one to get in there and start moving bags of whatever and cutting
Yep.
bags open and getting in the mix. And then anybody that's around me sees that, look, this is serious work. This guy wants it done. He wants it done well. He wants it done fast. And people fall into line and they do good work. They do better work if they've got somebody who's emotionally invested in the property out leading the way. They see the example. They follow the example. And at the end of the day, I've got a site that I'm happy to leave to the people in the neighborhood. The people in the neighborhood, they drive by it every day and they don't want to see a residual mess. Instead, they see something that looks like, this is going to go back to nature. It's going to take a little while, but it's got a good start already by the time we leave.
And it occurs to me again that there's a question in some people's minds, I'm sure, about somebody who does that. Are they able to navigate the concrete jungle and go into the boardrooms and do the fundraising necessary, execute on the deals with partners and all the stuff that comes along with being a real mining company and not just somebody who's out there in the field all the time. And it's interesting that you are kind of able to do both of those from what I've seen.
Well, the progress that has happened in the company since, say, December of 2012 has been largely because I've been trying hard to get it done. So whatever it's taken to get us to where we are now, whether it's talking to majors and making the deal like we made with Rio Tinto or cleaning up debts with creditors, I've waded in, put on my hip boots and waded into whatever I needed to, and so far I think I've got the job done, and I'll keep doing things that way. That's the only way I know how.
Yeah, and it's a beauty of the junior mining industry is that these people who are effective out in the field can also be effective leaders of the companies themselves. And I'd point out that you've worked in some of these larger, mining companies, Rio itself, in the past, I believe. And I just, I guess that experience kind of speaks to some of your ability to get the job done in the boardrooms as well. But I'd have to ask about, this behavior of them to put it back to you guys. It seems kind of strange that they would spend that amount of money and then walk away. As you said there, it's just like a gift for Bell Copper, depending on your perspective there.
Yeah, we understood from the minute we began talking with Rio Tinto. They made it very clear. They said, look, this is how we work. We get in on a project. We do work, spend money. Mainly, we need to get holes in the ground to answer questions that we have, answer the questions that caused us to get involved in the first place. And they said, look, when we're done, we either have ore in the ground and we finish the option, to their advantage, or we drop the project entirely. We don't retain royalties. We don't retain percentage interests. We don't warehouse projects. They can't afford to. So we knew going into this relationship with Rio Tinto that if the day came that they decided they hadn't seen what they wanted to see, that they would walk and we would get the whole thing back. So it's what has happened isn't a surprise. The way they ran their exploration, the way they sighted their holes, they left Bell a giant opportunity. We will exploit that opportunity, but really, it's not a surprise that they're walking away after spending $3 million+ doing exploration work.
So many questions come up for that, around that for me. And I guess, maybe the most pointed one for you is that, did they kill the project?
Exactly the opposite. They've created a compelling story that the place we wanted to go drill, Bell, once we had to take our hands off the wheel and allow Rio Tinto to put drill holes where they wanted. The place we wanted to drill has really been outlined by a kind of a U-shaped pattern of drill holes that Kennecott put in. They drilled all around the target that we wanted to drill. I can only speculate on why they would leave that pattern, but that's exactly what's happened. They've left a U-shaped pattern of their drill holes surrounding the target that we had when we finished K12 in 2016. We found zinc mineralization. We found the thickest supergene leached cap in our last hole, K19, that we've ever seen out there. Just spectacular earthy red hematite mineralization. We've seen all the evidence to suggest we're on the zinc-rich fringe of a big copper shell, and that copper shell should sit right in the area outlined by the U-shaped pattern of drill holes that Kennecott put in.
Wow. Oh God. And I'm sure you did your best to try and convince them of where you would have liked for them to drill.
Yeah, I had the last day I was out in the field when we wrapped up K19 just a week or so before Christmas. I had a fairly long sit-down session with their geologist out there and said, look, we've created a tremendous opportunity. I said, I don't expect the assay results to be spectacular because we haven't drilled the copper shell.
Yep.
We could see the sphalerite, we could see the zinc in there, we could see this very thick leached cap. The geological data, which is assay numbers, unless you're really looking at the small values and understand their significance, the assay values, nothing a mining engineer would be interested in. But the story that a geochemist, an exploration geochemist, or a geologist can see in the minerals, the alteration, all of that, tells a very compelling story. And I tried to convey that story to the Kennecott geologist out there and kind of empower him. He's not a young man, but he's a younger fella, and tell him that, look, the company, your company, needs you to be the champion of this project. You know more about it than anybody else in your organization, and you'll have to be the guy that convinces them they need to drill that next hole. And I explained very precisely where I thought he needed to go, and that is north of K19, northwest of K19, out into this oval-shaped region that could easily hold one of the world's bigger porphyry copper deposits. And I explained some of the geophysical signatures to him, in particular the magnetics that seem to show a paleo hill, a high that would have been subject to intense leaching. Just several signatures that seem to point to the same target, the one I want to drill now, inside their pattern. And I'm sure the guy tried hard.
Yep.
And I'm sure he's a bit brokenhearted. I think he saw the opportunity, but at the end of the day, Rio Tinto dropped it, and I'm happy for the work they did. They're great people. It's always an education for me to work with new, smart people. I always learn things. But at the end of the day, they've left us a gift, a tremendous opportunity, and we're going to get right back out on the ground and get to drilling again.
Go, Tim, go. That's exciting. And the question then becomes, right, the original option that you provided, that joint venture agreement that you signed with Rio Tinto there in 2016, that was done at, there was a bit of life coming back to the mining markets at that time, but it was still pretty bleak out there. And the terms that you guys had to provide to them, it seemed like there was a lot in it for them. questions. Well, and they even helped to fund some of the payments required to retain the surface rights, as I recall from looking at the information on the company site, their website. So, for people who wonder about your ability to fund, some of those deep holes.
Well, when we entered that agreement, Bell was absolutely desperate. We didn't have the payment to retain our mineral sublease from Newmont. That we had been served notice that would be expiring. It would effectively have turned our land position into a checkerboard, and nobody can market a checkerboard. So with really days remaining for me to cure the defect in our lease to the mineral right holder on half of our land position, I had to find somebody to pay the bill. And several of the majors were interested. None of them could move fast enough to get the payment made. Rio Tinto was able to do that, and we got that deal done on very short order. But as you say, it was during slow times in the mining industry that the terms were not particularly favorable for Bell. I don't think I'll ever have to make a deal that let's say bad. Again, we're in a much stronger position. We've removed the cloud of this security over the property due to the Copper Fox loan, and we've got just a tremendous amount of new high-quality data, geophysical, geochemical, the core. It's all a tremendous data set, and that will get us a much better deal with a major in the future, should we decide to take that step. For the time being, I've really got no interest in allowing some other set of geologists to try and figure things out while we've got the opportunity that Rio Tinto left for us to go out and test a major porphyry copper system with very few holes. One thing we learned that's really important is it's quite a bit shallower than anything we've been drilling in the past. We're still
really?
looking. Yeah. We're still looking for the target that Kennecott said they wanted, which was a supergene enriched chalcocite blanket. That geological environment exists 1,000 feet below surface. We've previously been drilling 1,700 feet before we would get into that sort of environment.
Yep.
By moving eastward, things, the bedrock, the laramide aged rocks, the porphyry related rocks are all hundreds of feet closer to surface than where we've drilled in the past. So, we're exploring a shallower patch of ground.
Wow.
And feel like we're much closer to the target. Well, we've got a big X on the map, and we'll be going there within the next 30 days. Do we have to drill extraordinarily deep holes? We don't have to, but I think that once we get into that ground, we're going to need to, because we'll have very well mineralized rocks coming out of the ground, and the best thing to do when that's happening is just keep the drill turning. Will we be able to finance it? I think the cores will allow people who provide financing to recognize what Bell has accomplished, and I think the money that we need to keep drills turning will come. We've got another opportunity, and that's a relationship. Our biggest shareholder is a drilling company, Godby Drilling. They've got the ability to core deep holes, and that relationship, even if we couldn't convince a broker or a banker or somebody to finance us, these guys that have spent their lives drilling holes in the ground know what good rocks look like when they see them coming out. They'll be highly motivated to keep the drill turning and keep the core coming out of the ground.
And you've done that before as well, even paying that driller in shares for some of the prior work programs. So
that's right. All of our deepest hole drilled to date, K11, was drilled entirely with Bell copper stock at a rotten time in the economy when Bell was trading at 2 or 3 cents. We had to, according to exchange rules, finance using 5-cent shares, and financed the their drilling costs, which were substantial for a hole that was over 4,000 feet deep, with taking nickel bell copper stock for at a time when we were trading at 2 or 3 cents.
Yeah, yeah. What a story! It's all about perseverance.
Yeah, and the right rocks. I would have given up a long time ago had we not sequentially found more and more encouragement in the drill cores. That's really where the story is. The story is in what's in the ground, recognizing what's in the ground, and staying on it. I can put a volume around a patch of rock now because we saw elevated though non-economic copper mineralization in K11, K12, K13. That the interval there is many hundreds of meters thick. We got nearly 600 meters of elevated copper in K11. Using that sort of a thickness across the volume outlined by Kennecott's drilling, there's 7 billion ton volume there that could end up being a copper shell. That's the volume we got to test, and within 30 days we can probably be out there with a drill. Permitting just is ought to be a snap. We've already got old permitted, actually nearly completely permitted Kennecott sites that were just never built because they didn't want to drill out there. But permitting won't be a delay this time around.
Lord knows it's been one in the past.
Yeah, that's right. Rusty cans kept us off of a few sites when Kennecott was out trying to permit. It took several months of historical artifact sorts of people looking at those things and deciding whether a can was significant because it had a 3-hole opening punched through the top rather than a pull tab on an aluminum can. But in the end, they decided those weren't historically significant. We got to do our work.
And if I could ask about this comment you made regarding the geology, that things might be more shallow than believed to be in the past. Is that something to do with the angle in the low angle slip fault again?
There are subsidiary faults that probably link at depth with that low angle fault. So there are steep normal faults. There are actually thrust faults, compressional faults in that hanging wall block that overall is a result of tension, but apparently as you go further east, well, the compression starts building up within that. It starts bumping up against some sort of immovable, maybe just the edge of the Colorado Plateau. It begins to impact the western boundary of the Colorado Plateau that hasn't been extended, and we've drilled a couple of thrust faults. The net result is that deeper rocks have been moved closer to surface along those faults. So there is bedrock at much shallower depths than anybody would have guessed, including me.
Wow.
Before drilling those holes.
Yeah. And do you have a sense for the outer edge of it yet? Have you been out to the far northeast side of things? And there haven't been any holes drilled out there yet, but any information or anything to give you a sense of how far, you say that you have a sense for the volume. I wonder about the outer edge of it.
We've got a few things. As you recall, Kennecott expanded our land package by about 55% after running the surface electrical survey. That was because we had a big IP anomaly hanging off the east and northern edges of the map. So that land expansion was intended to capture any extension of that IP anomaly. There hasn't been any follow-up geophysics to determine how big the chargeability anomaly is further to the east and north. We've got the ground.
Okay.
I don't have a strong desire to get out there and start exploring it yet with this more compelling giant target that we've got outlined by Kennecott's drilling, that's a very safe sort of target to be testing relative to more wildcat style drilling. But to answer part of your question, in the far field, on the nearest outcrop to the northeast, there are signs, what I consider fingerprints, mineralogical fingerprints of the Kabba system. So this is easily 2.5 miles to the northeast, the next exposure of bedrock that we get to see. There's fluorite mineralization, there's lead zinc mineralization in thin veinlets, and it seems to be the very distal mineralized fringe of the Kabba system. So I can take the footprint of the footwall, and I like the quartz magnetite veins as a deep equivalent of where the copper shell ought to be above it. If just the dimensions of that footprint,
yep,
times the thickness of the elevated copper that we hit in K11 and K12, gives you a volume of, well, it'll translate into many billions of tons of target material.
Yep. And it totally reasonable to start on that nearest edge. And
That's right.
it's taken you long enough to find that. You don't want to go out there and start confusing anyone who's watching.
Right. But that opportunity, the IP anomaly falling off the north and east edges of the map, is the sort of thing that will quickly bring in a major partner if we drill and don't find what we're looking for in the volume that I see is right now is most prospective. There's lots of room in the future for additional work, big targets at Kabba. Kennecott sort of surmised early on that there were multiple porphyry systems. So testing ideas like that is something a major partner would want to do. I don't want them around for the time being, but in the event that we don't find it with our next round of drilling, that opportunity still will allow us, I think, to complete a good deal with a major and allow them to continue spending their dollars.
And the land, the 50% of land that they acquired, that goes to you as well, with no, that was in the joint venture company and will now revert
right.
to you. Wow.
Exactly right. Yeah. So all of that is ours to do with as we need.
And that won't, you don't expect that'll be too burdensome in regards to property payments and stuff like that?
No, I don't think so. One of the important things that their work has done, about half of the land is state of Arizona land, and the procedure with the state of Arizona is they allow you to spread your expenditure over contiguous sections. If sections touch at a corner, they allow you to spread expenditure credits from one section out to anything else that touches that. We've spent a lot of money on state land. That's where probably 90% of Kennecott's expenditures went. We can spread our old expenditures, which are still remaining, and Kennecott's new expenditures out over that about more than 50% of what they added to keep it in good standing for years to come. We'll still have a rent payment to the sublease holder, but it's quite manageable.
And that's another stunning kind of subtle point that may not occur to most people, and appreciate you for mentioning it here, that those payments that Kennecott incurred, you can use those towards work obligations on.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. That will seem to give you some runway to survive.
It's a big check mark for our future. Literally years into the future, we'll be able to use those exploration credits.
It does seem amazing how nicely they left things for you here.
Yep. they looking at it from their point of view, they've got a ticking time bomb. The trucks roll in and out of their pits every single day.
Yep.
The ore comes out of the ground; it never goes back in. They've got to work very fast with their exploration. They've got to find the opportunity that's going to give them a very clearly identifiable ore in very large quantities, good high-grade ore. They can't survive on small deposits or low-grade deposits. They need the best of the best. I think in their haste to find that next opportunity, they missed the real gem at Kabba, and I don't have any interest in rubbing it in their nose, but I would really like to finish the job of making a discovery at Kabba and hopefully giving the message that they got to slow down a little bit or look at things a little more carefully before they walk off.
Yeah, well, and it's good, hear you wish them the best. I'm sure you do, given your experience in the company.
That's right.
Going way back, right? So it's a small world, this mining community, and it gets pretty competitive. But really, I think we're all competing against market cycle more than each other.
Time is the worst enemy of all, and the market cycles are just really make it tough. We've got to strike while the iron is hot. We've got to finance when we can finance, drill when we can finance, and get the biggest bang for the buck in that very short interval of time. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and it's a great time for that with a lot of macro chatter, global economics, people talking about a shortfall of copper discoveries. I go back and read articles from a few years ago when people were talking about, excessive amounts of copper supply in the global system. And it's surprising how quickly things can change.
Yeah, that's drying up fast. And it's hard to see it. You have to be able to read through the manipulation of the LME stockpiles. People are shuffling copper around, and it's an interesting story. But the big discoveries that have to be happening to keep pace with global growth, they just aren't happening.
That's right.
Bell has an opportunity to help solve a tiny little bit of that problem, but it's a big problem, and it's one that will provide opportunities for Bell once we kind of wrap things up at Kabba.
Yeah. Well, and in the area of Kingman, Arizona, too, of all places.
That's
great.
That's right. Yep, it's a good patch of ground. We're familiar with it, and we'll be back out looking for the next Kabba once we capitalize on Kabba.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that, because I wonder. It seems that Kabba has been all engrossing for you for a decade here, and I wonder, have you? I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I hope that you're out there in the field looking for more prospects. You got to be a bit tight-lipped about that kind of stuff in those property markets, and people come in and scoop you and stuff like that. You have to be careful. But I would think that the potential for a big win at Kabba would put some wind in the sails for you guys to go out, do some aggressive generative exploration.
Yeah, that's the stuff where I really get a lot of pleasure finding new opportunities and putting the story together, putting a land package together. And Arizona is filled with opportunities like that. But again, time is our enemy. Development is our enemy. Preservation is an enemy. There's lots of gorgeous places in Arizona, and they don't all need to be national parks.
Yeah.
There's been a bit too much for too long of a focus on preservation, and really to the detriment of utilization.
Yep.
Copper has to come out of the ground, and folks like Bell have to be the people to get it out. And so we're really focusing on areas where the urbanization pressure is low, where we can get out on kind of ugly ground where the potential to find new copper deposits exists.
Yeah. Well, and you speak about leading at site. when you're doing the dirty work and all. And I think there's something to be said about leading from the front on a global basis, with regards to standards, environmental standards, around mining. And this materials getting used every day, right? So it's going to come from somewhere. And if it's not, you have to be careful that the marginal sources who provide it, if the US, Arizona isn't willing to allow that mining activity to to continue to occur, some of those other places where it may come from may end up being a lot worse. So
Yeah, that's right. Arizona has strict regulations. The U.S. in general has very strict environmental regulations. We follow them. We're very different miners than the miners of even a half a generation ago. And I kind of grew up in a very environmentally sensitive area up northwestern California in the redwood trees, and
mhm.
The parents of my friends were leaders in the environmental organization, so I grew up understanding that point of view. And when I clean up a drill site, making the place look good again, as untrammeled as possible again, I think I do a better than average job. And if we're working in the Philippines or in the Congo or something like that, the regulations are there. The pressure to make the place as beautiful as possible again isn't there, and bigger messes get left. So I think Arizona is a great place to mine the next pound of copper. Do it wisely, and do our best to set the earth straight once we're done. But Arizona is a great place to do it.
Well, and I think a headline grabbing discovery hole or two out of Kabba really help hammer that home.
Yeah, we'll try to get that done.
Godspeed, Tim. Thank you.
You're welcome.